Hello, I'm Derek John Johnson. Today's video this is going to be somewhat of a response to A Dose of Buckley. In his latest video, he basically talked about video game trigger warnings and gave some really poor arguments against them. So I'm just going to be talking about why I do view them as actually important in some cases and debunking some of his arguments against them to the best of my ability. For starters, I'm going to go in why they are important. Because here's the thing. Issues like domestic abuse, rape, suicide, torture, etc., are very serious topics that many people do struggle with. And here's the thing. Seeing those topics in a certain way can trigger a trauma attack or a PTSD episode. And going in, you need to know that beforehand so you can know to either skip that part of the game or to not play that game till you are in a better mindset. A few of the examples Buckley gave was of Boyfriend Dungeon, a kind of wacky dating sim where basically one of your suitors kidnaps you or stalks you. And basically is saying, well, if we add a trigger warning in for that, it's going to ruin the surprise and people aren't going to enjoy the story as much. One, I and many others actually are able to enjoy a story even knowing big events and spoilers going beforehand, because it's still fun to experience the journey yourself. Plus, a big draw of dating sims is replaying multiple times and getting multiple endings. And plus, here's the thing. You don't have to say X character is doing the stalking and kidnapping. You just have to add content warnings, stalking, torture, kidnapping, etc. Here's the thing, if you make the secret villain so obvious anybody can guess it just by adding in a trigger warning, it's you as the writer who screwed up, not the person playing the game who guessed the secret beforehand. Plus, here's the thing. Stalking is a really serious, horrible thing that has affected many real people. And Buckley's arguing that, oh, well, it's in a fantasy scenario. It's not what actually happened in reality, so it shouldn't trigger people. Yes, it's a fantasy scenario, but certain events like the feelings of being watched, having somebody send you letters you don't want, etc., can trigger those memories, which can bring back up those feelings to the surface for somebody. I'm not saying don't put things like that in your game. I'm just saying tell people beforehand with like a screen or a little message on the store, hey, this game involves X content. You shouldn't play if you suffer from insert conditions here. Going to another point of his that not every game is for everybody. This one I kind of do agree with, but here's the thing. Having your game be accessible to as many people who are interested in that certain genre as possible is a good thing. And trauma victims deserve to have fun too. You see, nobody's saying that an RPG shouldn't be an RPG, or a dating sim shouldn't be a dating sim, or a dungeon crawler shouldn't be a dungeon crawler. You see, you shouldn't uproot the mechanics of your game to basically just appease people who just aren't interested in the genre. But if you're going to involve storylines that deal with serious stuff and have depictions of that might hit a bit too close to home for people, yeah, the very least you could do is have a warning beforehand. TV shows and movies have been doing that for a while, and people are still able to enjoy those. Asking developers to put content warnings before their games is common fucking decency, not having them uproot their games. And another thing he talked about was Final Fantasy XIV basically changing up a model because it might have triggered some people with a certain phobia. And basically his point was, well, they shouldn't have to. Why should they have to change this one thing to appease to a small subset of people? And I say, why not? You see, the more people you have able to play your game that are interested in your type of game, the more money you make. This isn't like removing a mechanic or changing a major storyline. They just slightly changed them all, which wouldn't take too much work, just to, have players who were already interested and enjoying that game play that game a little bit easier, so I don't really see the fucking issue. One example he brought up was Doki Doki Literature Club having new warnings. Well, I do agree there shouldn't be warnings for, every single jump scare and stuff. And the warning originally was actually pretty good, but here's the thing. This is a game that has graphic depictions of suicide, talks about abuse, literally has you seeing your friend. Basically, these girls have become your friends in this virtual world that you've grown an emotional attachment to die horribly and painfully over and over again. So yeah, having a trigger warning for things like suicide, emotional abuse, kidnapping, Stockholm Syndrome, etc., is actually a pretty damn good idea, as it lets people know, hey, this shit is going to be in the game, maybe you shouldn't play it if you might have something in you triggered by these certain issues. And a few of the examples he gave was of Reservoir Dogs, a notoriously violent film where basically he made fun of trigger warnings by basically making fake trigger warnings that go into extreme detail, saying it would spoil the movie. But here's the thing. There's a huge difference between having a little warning pop up beforehand that says, this film has depictions of torture, violence, etc., which might not be for everybody. You might trigger some people's PTSD or something. Please do not watch if you are disturbed by this. And basically, before every scene having, this is going to happen and this is what will trigger blah blah. It's a fucking straw man. People who are for trigger warnings in some games do not want complete in-depth descriptions of every single thing that happens beforehand. And while yes, there are some times when it might be unnecessary, like if you have a cooking game, and you're making tacos to have a trigger warning about cultural appropriation and racism, I don't really think that's necessary. Tacos are pretty much a fucking food. And I don't really think you need a trigger warning beforehand, just if you're going to have something mild like that. Now, to be fair to him, I don't think he was malicious, and he did give some decent advice of, going and seeking therapy, but here's the thing. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but here in America, therapy is actually expensive for too expensive for many people to afford. And getting onto Medicare or Medicaid can be a pain. Staying on can be damn near impossible with the amount of fucking loopholes they have to kick you off. Here's the thing. Trigger warnings are a legit thing in therapy because if somebody has severe trauma, it's going to be triggered by something. They kind of need to know beforehand to avoid going into a fucking panic attack. Lots of video for day. Bye. Sorry if I seemed a little bit scattered about some of the background noise, as well as if I missed anything. Lots of video. Again, video for day. Bye.